No matter how you structure your screenplay, it will still come down to having a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it is what happens between those 3 points that will determine what will happen in your screenplay. Hi, I'm Isaac, and this is how to write your screenplay, a step-by-step guide. Structure is important, and many people concentrate on structure, sometimes too much. But in the end, it all comes down to that one thing, your screenplay having a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it's what happens between those 3 points that is so important. So important because it depends on what your characters do from the beginning, through the middle, to the end of your screenplay. There must be a line that runs through it, a line that your reader or viewer can follow. And here is the other important thing that should be taken note of. Your character needs to be believable, especially your protagonist. If your protagonist suddenly do something that your reader or viewer cannot believe is possible for that protagonist to do, you have lost your reader or viewer already. Your reader or viewer must know that your protagonist has certain skills to deal with the situation. Or your protagonist must learn certain skills to deal with the situation. If your protagonist knows everything, can do everything, there's no need for your story because your protagonist can stop it before it happens. And that's why you also need a strong antagonist. Let's go back to Titanic. Why is Cal so upset when Rose chose Jack over him? And that comes in with the type of person Cal is. Now why did it lead to the conflict in Titanic? Why did it lead to Rose's story in Titanic, which was the main story in Titanic and not the love story between Jack and Rose? It's because Rose also had needs and wants. Rose wanted to make her own decisions about her life. She did not want to be told, as was the case in Titanic. She grew up in this rich man's life where women had to know their place, where women had to be dependent on men. And that was not in Rose's nature. And that drove the conflict between Rose and Cal even further, especially when Jack came into the story, because now Rose was touching Cal's manhood. Rose was touching Cal, especially on something that was of utmost importance to him, and that was his stature in the society they lived in, this rich man's society, where every woman had to know her place. And Rose, going up against Cal basically, was showing Cal that he was no real man. And that Cal could not take, because it was cutting deep into who he was, who he believed he was, and his stature in society. Now it brings us to another point. You need to know your characters, who your characters are, what your character believe about themselves, and what they believe about what other people think about them, and what other people would think if certain things happens to them. In Breaking Bad, the protagonist found out that he was ill and dying, but he had a family, and he had a family he needed to care for, and he didn't have money. He had 2 jobs, but he didn't bring in enough money to support his family's lifestyle they were living. And here his illness brought another dimension into his life. So why would a mild-mannered teacher suddenly start manufacturing drugs? Because of the driving force that was behind it. Bringing me back to my earlier point. Your protagonist must have certain skills, knowledge, and expertise to deal with a situation that arises, that threatens him and those around him. In Breaking Bad, the teacher was a science teacher who knew about chemicals. That is why he could start making drugs. If he did not have that background, he would have had to go and learn about making drugs. So you can see, it's not only about your plot, the story, conflict, and conflict resolution. It goes deeper than that. The reason why your character do certain things and why he or she can do it. And that needs to come out in your narrative. That is what makes narrative such an important thing in your story, in your screenplay, in your film. You need to let your reader or viewer know why things are happening, how it is happening, and what your characters are capable of. And that starts happening not at the end, but from the beginning of your story. Introducing your characters to your reader or your viewer. Introducing your plot and your story to your readers or viewers. There starts that line that runs through from the beginning, through the middle, to the end of your story. If that does not happen, you have a problem. If what happens at the beginning is unbelievable, no one will believe what is happening in your screenplay, your story, or your film.